everybody. Welcome to this week's Fireside Online Chat in the Life After Dev series. Today we've got Natalia. I'm not going to introduce her because it's much better for her to introduce herself. And we've also got Ruth, who is on the Media and Global Development course. So Ruth is going to be asking Natalia a few questions to kick this off, and then we'll open it up to anybody who's in the room after she's asked her questions. So thanks, Natalia, for being here. Thank you, Ruth, for being today's wonderful host. Looking forward to hearing your discussion. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining in this afternoon. Welcome once again, Natalia.
Thank you for having me here.
Sure, please tell us more about what you do. What does multimedia journalism do, and what is it about you?
Okay, so I'm a journalist. I call myself a multimedia journalist because I work with different mediums. I work with photography, with video, and also with text. I have been based in East Africa, specifically in Nairobi, in Kenya, for the last 12 years. And my work is at the intersection of gender, human rights, and also forced migration. I'm passionate about looking for stories that don't get so much attention, looking for stories in communities, through meeting people from those communities, or sometimes it's really just random connections that I get to meet people in my daily life, or moving through places, or working on assignment. So sometimes things will catch my attention, and I'll decide to dig deeper into a story. Apart from journalism, I also work as a communication consultant for the humanitarian and development sector. So I provide services to NGOs and international organizations working in the continent in the different sectors, different areas: education, health, gender, climate change, for example. And apart from that, I also have a small nonprofit that I founded when I moved to Kenya, and which I've been trying to build since then.
I would be very much interested to know, how did you get into the development space?
Okay, so I think it has to do a bit with my personal background. I was born in Moldova, which, as you may know, is a very small country, and we have a reputation for being the poorest country in Africa. Sorry, in Europe, not in Africa, in Europe. So I moved with my family to Portugal when I was 16. So I spent a part of my adolescence in Portugal, trying to integrate myself in a new society, trying to find a place for myself in a place that I didn't know, in a country that I didn't speak the language, didn't have friendships or any connection. So it was basically for me starting from zero. So I experienced a bit of challenges, which and I realized, for me, what came really strong during that period was the power of education. So if I'm in a place that I don't know so well, where my opportunities don't look so bright, the future doesn't look so bright, I realized that the only weapon that I could use was education. So I really decided to invest in my school, in my studies. I made it like a goal to be one of the best students, to finish my education with success, because that was really the only way out for me. And I think this is the development work or the development space where I am now. It's a bit related, yes, to my personal stories, because even through the nonprofit that I founded, one of the areas that we mainly work is education, either through scholarships for students from vulnerable communities, or just providing digital literacy skills in communities where young people don't have access. We also run a community library which provides books, textbooks, and just opportunities for people to explore and try to see that there's more beyond the horizon. Because sometimes when we grow up in communities where opportunities are scarce, young people tend to feel like this is how the world looks like. This is how my life looks like. So this is what the world looks like, which is not true. So I'm really passionate about um, encouraging and inspiring people to never give up on their dreams. And that is what we also try to do at the foundation that I started in Kenya, and most of our work is around that.
Thank you. Working in the humanitarian space and also the development space, just to be exact, how do you find the balance to make sure that you are maintaining the integrity of the communities that you're working with, at the same time you're also doing the work in the as a multimedia journalist? How do you find the balance?
Yes. So I would say that powerful storytelling and ethical storytelling are not two contradictory subjects. So they go hand in hand. When we make an effort to really listen to the people whose stories we tell more powerful stories. And this comes from just being aware of our own biases and our own assumptions. Because we are all different people and we all come from somewhere. And we are the way we are because of our background, because of our past, because of our stories. So, of course, even as a journalist, when you walk into a place and you want to focus on a story, you want to interview people, you want to publish, you already come with some preconceived ideas. Maybe we are not never fully aware of the reality of the other people. So as much as we do our research before going to the field, as much as we try to gather facts and information and data, the most important thing is to listen to the people themselves. So it's taking that time to give them space to create that relationship of trust. If you walk into a community and you want to do your story in 1 hour, you just walk in and out. There's no really so many deep stories that you will be able to listen to. So I'd say before you even walk in the community with your camera, just take that time to go and without a paper, without a camera, without a pen, just walk around and meet people and talk to people. And then you can go back later to focus on whatever story that you are working on. And always just trying to really listen to the perspective of other people, being very mindful of how we work and also the questions that we ask. Sometimes working on difficult stories, we listen to painful stories all the time. And we need to be aware that those stories are painful to the people telling them also, not just for us who are listening to them. So sometimes ethical storytelling comes with not asking certain questions also. Being aware that certain questions may bring painful memories, may re-traumatize people who have already gone through very painful experiences. And as much as journalists, we want to get the details, we want to tell the story, we want to tell the world what's going on. We also need to be aware that we are bringing back memories and experiences that maybe people are trying to forget. So it's a bit reading the room, seeing the direction the interview is going, seeing the reaction of the people that we are talking to, seeing the impact that our questions are having on them, and working with that. So yes, the story is very important, but how we tell the story is as important as the story.
Um, just to put some emphasis on what you talked about, you said you try to reflect the realities of the local community. Working in Kenya, this is one of, just like many other African countries, Kenya is very rich in diversity, cultures, and so how do you ensure that your news storytelling is not just foreign news, but it's indeed reflecting the realities of the local communities in Kenya?
Hmm. As I said, it's trying to have a nuanced balance. It's looking at, yes, okay, who's going to read this story? We always have to have in mind the public, who this story may bring, something relevant, something important, something meaningful, trying to connect with the audience. But also just not forgetting that we also have a duty to be to tell authentic and respectful and accurate stories. That's our duty to the people on the ground, the people whose stories we tell.
Um, I know working in the development space can be a bit challenging, and I'm sure you have encountered some ethical dilemmas in your work. How do journalists navigate? And maybe if you can give it a personal touch on how you have navigated an issue where there was an ethical dilemma and you handled all that in your development space.
Mm-hmm. Would you is this question about like moral dilemmas or
Yeah, more like moral dilemmas when you're trying to do your work, and then you're still trying to balance the issues of integrity, ethical standards, but at the same time, you need to get the story out. If you can give us an example of how you handled one of that.
mm-hmm. So sometimes what will happen is if you haven't really taken that time to explain what is the purpose of you being there, why is this story important to tell, and what's going to be the impact, which many times we don't really know as journalists. We may feel like this story is important to tell, but we don't really know what's the outcome for the people. And we cannot make false promises. We cannot say that by publishing this story, I can guarantee that your situation will change. And I would say that this is where being a journalist and working in this space, that is one of the main challenges. It's dealing with very difficult situations sometimes, or witnessing very difficult things happening, people in very difficult circumstances, and you don't have the power to provide an answer. The only thing you can do is tell their story and bring their story to light and let other people know that this is happening and something should be done about it. But it's a very thin line between, creating or encouraging people to believe that something will change. Because of course we tell stories because we want something to change. However, it's also very important to let people know that we also have limitations. Publishing a story doesn't rarely means something will happen just after the story is published or very soon. Sometimes it may take a long time or even years before any kind of change happens. I remember when I started my photojournalism work, I was based in Kenya, but there was the conflict happening in South Sudan. So I used to travel all the way from Nairobi by bus to Uganda at the border with South Sudan, and there was thousands and thousands and thousands of refugees crossing every day, and their stories were absolutely horrible. There were people who had just lost their members of their family who had just been killed like hours before while traveling to the border to Uganda. And I remember spending the first time I went there, I spent a week listening to these stories, and I was convinced that my story will have a very big impact when it's published. Because at the time it was a bit at the beginning of the conflict, and there was so many international media reporting on it. So I knew mine would be among the first stories coming out of this conflict. And I thought once I get to Nairobi and the story is out, definitely something will happen. And that was in 2016. And unfortunately, the conflict kept going on after my story was published. And for me, it was the first time I had this, it's like a reality check. Yes, you may believe your story is important. You may believe that you have done a good work by telling the story of the people you met and their experiences and everything. But it doesn't mean that the world will also think that your story is important, because there's so many other things going on in the world. And you don't have the power, or you don't have the power to make people stop. We try, that is what we try. And that's why we say ethical storytelling and impactful storytelling is important, but we also have limits as journalists. And for me, up to this day, that is one of the main challenges, is working into a community, working into a place, and speaking to people listening to what they have to say, and then yes, what happens after? It's out of my control.
Yeah, I understand. As journalists, you have limits, as you have indicated, and then you have said that sometimes you try to help them. It's not like we can stop some of these things, but we try to help them. Working, for example, in the conflict environment, like you have indicated, can be traumatizing, can have a lot of emotions going on around it. I just want to have an idea, maybe different from how the other stories are processed. For example, news, ordinary news. Do you go back to the people that you've worked with, for example, the victims, to say, you know what, this is what we worked on and this is the outcome? Do they appreciate that kind of effort when you do, if at all you have come across such incident?
Okay, so I can give an example from not necessarily from journalists, but I can give an example from development work where I see more people becoming aware, more organizations and more professionals in the development sector being aware of being accountable to the people whose stories we take and tell. And I always I like this I like this sentence that says, I read somewhere that says the stories that we tell belong to the people, not to us. So sometimes when we go into a community and decide to, focus on something and bring that story, it's almost that we feel like, okay, this is now, it's my article, it's my story, it's my work. However, behind that work, it's the people who gave you that story in the first place. And um, what lacks many times is the accountability after we have taken that story. And I see people becoming more aware of that in the development sector. I hear organizations talking about, going back to the community and showing the pictures they have taken, printing some pictures sometimes to give to people. Um, I don't think it's still, I don't think it's a common practice. I think it's something that people in this space are thinking more and being more aware of, but I think there's still a lot of work to do. As a journalist, one of the stories that I worked on and I loved working on, and I'm still in touch with the people from the story. It's a school that also is a rescue center in Kajiado County, which is a predominantly Maasai area here in Kenya. So girls still face a lot of challenges, such as limited access to education, being from growing in a still patriarchal society where girls are seen as assets. So when you reach a certain age, now you can be married and you'll be a source of wealth for your family because that is still a reality. Um, parents don't really see education for girls as a priority because that is not their place in the world where they belong. Their place is to get married, to have children, and to help the husband to take care of the family. So this is a story that I worked in 2017 for the first time that I became aware of this school, and I went to visit several times over a period of 3 months, and I met one girl who at the time she was a woman. She had been a student in this school, and then she pursued higher education. She was working in Nairobi, and she decided to just leave her work in the corporate sector to go back to her village and start a small organization to support this school where she had been a student. So for me, it was a very powerful story because it was an example of, change, grassroots-led change. So people who have lived experience in the story, going back and trying to make a change for other people in their community. And that for me was so powerful. I wanted to follow up this story, and I wanted to also um, just play a small part by publishing that story in the international media. So they have after the story has been published, there has been a lot of media attention. There has been a lot of partners coming on board to support Selena's work. Selena is the woman who was a student in the school and is now like a girls education and girls rights activist. And I really feel like that is a story that I did and I was proud of because it had an impact. And somehow by just sharing about Selina's work and about her school, about the school, and what she does as a young woman who grew up in this community without any resources, without any kind of support, what she managed to build, and always keep telling this story and sharing this story over the years. I feel like it has made an impact for her work and for the school.
Very interesting to learn. Before I open the floor of questions to our members, I just have one question. Growing up in Europe and then you are working in Africa, in terms of working with the communities in Kenya, who have got different perceptions of how European media works and all sorts of things. Do you ever make questions where the communities want to know what the intended purpose of your work is, or sometimes maybe you face resistance because of the things that have happened in the past and they don't want to be associated with Multimedia? If you can give an example of anything of that sort.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so one of the communities that I've been working since the beginning, since moving to Kenya, is an informal settlement here in Nairobi called Kibera. I started working in this community not as a journalist, even though I have also published stories from the community. But my first contact and my first relationship with this community was when I was going, just a few months after arriving in Kenya. I was just going around and visiting different NGOs and different projects in Nairobi to try to understand more how development, trying to understand more development space and how people work and what kind of projects. And so I landed here and I met a young man he was born and raised in Kibera, and he was running a football project for children in his community. And I was so impressed because he grew up without many resources. He didn't manage to go to university, but he still chose to do projects in the community instead of finding a work somewhere outside and focusing on building himself. He was still trying to build his community and support children in his community. And I was so surprised. I was asking myself, why is he doing this work? Why doesn't he do something else? So I decided to follow him for over a few months, just visit regularly and talk to children in his project. And I always used to carry my camera because, of course, coming in a new place, you also want to show a bit of the reality of the place where you are, but it was not really intentional. I wasn't really working on any kind of story. I was just giving myself time to understand. And then some of these children were in his project, they started asking me to use my camera. And I used to teach them how to take photos with my camera. And at some point, this idea struck me, like if I'm coming here all the time, carrying my camera on the shoulder and just giving them my camera for a few minutes to take photos, what if I get some cameras and actually give them and teach them how to use them and let them tell their own stories? So that is how my nonprofit organization was born. This was our first project. I made a call on my Facebook page to my friends back in Portugal and said, I'm looking for 10 cameras. If you have old cameras that you are not using, please donate. I'm coming home on Christmas. We'll collect them, and then I'll come back in January and distribute them to the kids, and we'll do a very interesting project. And when I went home, I managed to get those cameras. And coming back to Nairobi, we started a project that was supposed to last for 4 months. It lasted for 2 years. And it's still one of the most rewarding projects I've ever worked on, because it really allowed me to build a relationship with these children, to understand their background, to understand what they wanted for their life, what were the challenges, what were the joys, what was their life like. And I'm still we are still in touch. So this project happened in 2014, and we are still in touch up to this day with the majority of the young children who are now adults who participated on this project. One of them is now a photojournalist, a professional photojournalist working for AP, Associated Press. And it is in this project that he discovered his passion for telling stories, for taking photos, for going out there and and focusing on things that matter to him and matter to his community. So I always try to have a bit of that approach, even in in NGO assignments where sometimes you'll be sent somewhere and say you have 2 days to work on this project to document this story for us, and I always try to advocate for some time to go and just say hi and see how the community looks like, and just talk to people, say we'll be coming here, and we'll be doing this, not just landing in a place and thinking that, okay, this is the story that I think I want to tell because I think this is the story that matters, this is the story that I see, so this is the story I want to tell. It's also trying to understand, okay, from your perspective, is there any other detail? Is there any other information? Is there any other view that is more relevant to you than what I think it is?
Mm. No, thank you very much. That's very interesting to know. Before we move into the second session, are there any questions to Natalia before we move on? Any questions? There's a
Liv has
question
just written something in chat. Hello, this has been really interesting and helpful. Thank you. I wanted to ask, what was the first steps that you took to get into the media journalism side of development? So great question, Olivia, because that was my question as well.
Okay, I'll say I don't have the most linear path in this in this field, because to tell you the truth, I did not study journalism. I studied psychology, and I worked for 3 years in Portugal before moving to Kenya. I worked in psychology. And I tried, after finishing my studies, I spent 5 years in university, you can imagine, ending in a totally different field. Sometimes I question myself, how would it have been if I had just studied journalism from the beginning? So before moving into journalism, I spent 3 years working in psychology, and I tried three different fields. And I always lasted maybe less than 1 year in all of those jobs because I felt it was not my place. What was really missing in that point of my life was the purpose. It was seeing, why am I doing this and what kind of impact can this have? And I've always also been passionate about telling stories and listening to people's stories, which is still related to psychology, because in psychology we listen a lot. A great part of our work is listening, and I feel like in journalism it's still the same, because we have to listen a lot and we have to give space to people to talk. So when I moved to Kenya, I was really curious about development work, education, human rights, and I found myself finding interesting stories and wanting to share them with the world. So the first steps that I took, it's completely doing the work day by day. It's finding a story that I feel I want to write about, or I want to photograph. Looking for what kind of outlets could be interested in this story, and it's a lot of research, finding what are the steps to follow for you to pitch a story for this outlet, what kind of stories they prioritize, how do they publish them, is it more text, is it more photos, is it video? It's a lot of research, and then of course, not having that previous experience, it took me some time. I remember the first story I published was a photo story about protests in Kenya, for Al Jazeera, and I was even surprised that I could get this story out there to such a big audience. And yes, what I want to say is that it's possible for you to find a niche that you are passionate about, and it's possible for you to be successful in that niche. But you have to understand how it works. You have to dedicate a lot of time, um, just also to understand the outlets, to understand what is it that they are looking for, because your story will not be a fit for all the publications. So yes, it's just reading a lot, looking a lot at what other people are publishing, where they are publishing it, and what is around you that you could pick on.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? You can put them in the comment box, or you can just raise your hand and then I'll give you a chance to ask your question. Yes, David, please.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question to that. And Olivia, if you have any more questions, please do put them into chat. So you did psychology. How did you learn your photography? How did you get your photography skills and your other multimedia skills? Where did you learn them? Did you go back to school? Did you do it by trial and error? Did you learn by YouTube? How did you learn?
I didn't use a lot of YouTube to be honest. I just did a lot of photography by myself. So I started with a very small camera with a point and shoot. And I remember a very funny episode from my early experience in photography. I was on Facebook in this group of photographers in Kenya, and people were sharing, photos that they thought they were interesting, or they were good photos, and sharing the location and the settings of the photos. Because this is something that photographers always are very curious about. What is the settings of this photo? What kind of aperture did you use? What shutter speed did you use? So I used to I used to see those photos in the group, and I thought that this is a normal, common practice in photography. When you share your photos, you also share your settings, the settings of your photo. So I used to take photos with this point and shoot, which is totally automatic, of course, and share these photos on the Facebook group and putting also the settings. And then some years later, I realized that, well, these settings only matter if you are really using manual mode, because that's when you can control and have a choice and say this was intentional. I use this shutter speed because of this and that, or I use this aperture because that's what works for the lighting or whatever. And for me, I was just sharing automatic settings. So yes, it's a lot of trial and error. So I did a lot of photography on my own, going out there and spending time and trying different things. But also, I really got inspiration by following other people's work. So this is something that I think it's important when you are working as a photographer, is looking at other people's work and finding those people that really inspire you, either because their photography is exceptional, or sometimes it can be because of the kind of stories we tell. And for me, I was really more drawn to the storytelling part, not so much the technicalities. I've never gave so much attention to the technicalities of photography, that I have to use a certain that a certain aperture works better, or it was really looking at what kind of stories you are telling, and telling them in a way that touch people's hearts, that connects people in some way because of the emotion, because of the details, because when people look at your photo, they can feel something. And these are the kind of photographers I used to follow on social media, on Instagram a lot. I think it also has a downside of things, because sometimes when you look at too much work, you kind of start having this mentality of standardized work. Okay, this is what the industry is looking for. This is what is considered successful or good. So I should somehow adapt my work to meet those standards. And I will encourage young people who are starting in this field to avoid doing that. Yes, it is important to look at other people's work to get inspiration, but always remind yourself, why did you start this on the first place? Did you start because you're passionate about social justice? You're passionate about women's empowerment? You're passionate about finding those stories that nobody else has access to or is able to tell? And because that is what will keep your purpose alive through your career. There will be very moments in your career when you'll feel completely tired and fed up with all this work. You think this is not meaningful, doesn't make sense anymore. So you need to have that base where you can come back and say, this is where I started in the first place. This is what I do this, and this is what I want. This is why I want to continue doing it. I don't know if I got a bit lost in between.
No, I think that has answered the question really, really well, and it's good to also hear that you looked into the psychology of things, and so therefore your degree wasn't completely to waste. Any other questions from you, Ruth?
Yeah, I've got a few. I think I was gonna go into what should students or other people that are interested to go into media journalism or into the development space um uh, have this the basic skills. What skills can they focus on? But I think we're going to talk about like later. Uh, but then something caught up my mind. Natalia, I've seen your work. It's very brilliant, very good. The photos very brilliant. But then I'm thinking in where there's competition of this kind of work, you need to produce good work, you need to produce good things for the public. How do you balance to? We've also seen where journalists have posted something for the likes, for the clicks, for the followership. How do you balance that to ensure that it's not just about the clicks? But though you're also putting into the integrity of your people or the work that you're putting in. How do you balance those?
Um, I'd say I'm not the most drawn person to visibility. Um, I don't feel like I started in this career because I wanted to get somewhere. Um, I started because it was what was making sense, and it's still making sense for me. And there's some very strong foundation that were behind my work, maybe because I had tried working in a different field and it didn't make sense. So I found that in journalism is where I found my place. So I'm not. I started when I started working in this field, I was actually doing mostly breaking news. And of course, in breaking news, you have to produce work that will call people's attention, especially editors. Because, for example, in Nairobi, I'm a freelancer, and there are, like me, there are freelancers. And there's always someone available for work. When you bring news, you'll find maybe 10 or 20 other people covering the same news in the same space as you. And then, of course, you have to um, fight for your place there. You have to prove that you can do this, and editors can do the work. So, of course, you have to produce good work. But you always try to do stories that are in some way meaningful to you, because that is when you'll produce your best work. If people are covering a story on climate change, and there's a village or a town that is completely flooded, and everyone is rushing there because they feel like now this is a story that I want to cover, this is a story that is going to get covered. Get my stories for All Press Photo, or for any other award. I'd say that that may not happen because maybe you are not really passionate about that story, and you'll be doing work that 10 other people are doing, and the work will look all the same, or maybe other people will have better work than you because you don't really feel the story. You're only going, everyone is rushing there. So always looking for stories that really speak something to you. You want to do them in the first place. It doesn't matter to you if they will end up being published or not. You still want to tell that story, even if no other outlet is picking it. Even if you get a no from many editors, you still feel like it's a story worth telling, and it's worth spending your time. I remember there was a story I was working on about forced evictions in Nairobi around 2016. And go there. So the eviction happened over a period of 1 week, and I used to go there every morning because I was really trying to avoid the police before they arrived at the site to not get myself in trouble. And there was this journalist from a media agency. He used to tell me like, "Why are you going there every day? That story is not even a story. It's a very small space. It's a very small place, and nobody will publish it." Me, I still felt it was worth going there because that story was important to me, and it was important. I feel like yes, when you follow things that you are passionate about, you'll that's when you'll produce your most powerful work, and that's how you'll also carve a place in this space. Same with development. When I work on NGO assignments, I usually do not take events or conferences or things like that. This is not what I'm passionate about. And if I'll take this assignment, I will work that is not really great because I don't feel it. So I have issues that are relevant to me in some way.
Very good. It's very beautiful to know about that. And I like how you put it that it's very good to follow your passion and then you can follow the story. Before I hand it over to David, I have got one more question, and my question is going to be in twofold. The way journalism is now, it's very different from back in the day. There are so many uses of technologies, tools, for example, AI. How do you use such tools in your everyday life and in the development space? Number one. Number two, with the coming in of social media, do you think we still need traditional type of journalism?
Yes, I think we definitely need traditional types. I see people still buying newspapers. And every time I see someone buying a newspaper, I feel like, yes, this is something that you should continue doing. Because reading something when you have, a paper in your hand is different from just scrolling through our phones. I feel like we are really getting too much information these days from social media, from all these platforms. And the downside of that is that people really can feel that they have seen so much and there's so much going on. So at some point, I don't know where I stand because every time I open my phone and I see so many news about so many bad things going on, and then I can't do anything about it. So I feel like it really affects a bit our empathy. Because if you are looking for the stories that you want to read, you are focusing on those stories that are relevant in some way. But if you are just getting so many news and so many stories, then it all kind of becomes the same. So I think, yes, definitely we need traditional forms of journalism. Regarding AI, this is, it's a conversation. Last week, I was delivering a training for young storytellers from 5 African cities that gathered in Nairobi for a project where they were discussing and setting the scene for going back to their cities and telling stories of resilience in their communities. So one of the questions we were discussing important it is to get your work right in the camera and not just rely on post-production. Say that maybe I didn't get the perfect picture, but I still can go back and edit it on my computer. And one of the question was, okay, yes, this photo looks blurry, but I still can put it on AI, and it will give me a good photo. It will fix the error or the mistake that I did while working. And I believe in being truthful. I believe telling the story as I see it. So I don't think AI is a bad tool. I think it can be used, make your work better in ways that don't affect the truth. So if you are relying on AI to write stories, if you are not making that effort and really spend time and get to know the story because you can just use AI to write it faster, I don't think is the way to go. I understand, for example, people who are not fluent in English, using AI to write the story before submitting it to the editor. But that doesn't mean that you are allowing a computer to do your work. It's still you who does that story. The only thing you are using help is for using the right language.
Okay. Thank you very much, Natalia. For those answers. I think I now hand it over to David.
Okay, thank you, Natalia. Thank you, Ruth. Some really, really interesting things. I always learn something new every time that we run one of these sessions. So there was lots of things in there that I think will be really, really useful to the students who watch this, who joined us today, but also watch on YouTube at a later time. I don't think I have any other questions, because I think Ruth has answered them really well, and I think or asked you them really well, and you've answered them really well. So I'd just like to say thank you very much. I mean, usually I end with sort of, you know, what's your number one tip, but I think you've sort of given that already, that to immerse yourself in the communities and to be given that time. Do you think that was what you would say would be your number one tip for anybody wanting to go into this?
I think my number one tip will in fact be to be passionate about.
Okay.
Because working in this space, it's difficult. We listen to painful stories. We witness difficult events. We meet people in difficult circumstances all the time, and you really have to be passionate about it. Don't go into it because you want to be successful, you want to win an award, you want to be the best. Do it because you are really passionate about it, and that is what you see yourself spending the rest of your life doing.
I think that's brilliant advice, and oddly, I've spoken to 2 or 3 people very, very recently who said exactly the same thing, that you need to follow your passion, and especially if you're just about to embark on a career. A friend of mine who's a graphic designer says that and I think it's a famous quote, I can't remember exactly, but if you do something you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And
Yes.
I think that is very, very true. So yeah, brilliant. Again, thank you, Natalia, for your time. Thank you, Ruth, for your questions. And goodbye, everybody online who's watching this as a recording. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.